I started photography in 2008, but there was definitely some long periods of time in which I was not shooting really at all. So, even though that's like 14 years, I would say that I probably have around 10 years of photography experience under my belt. I It's interesting to look back like at the very beginning of the journey because I'm at such an extremely different place now, which granted 10 years is a long time, so obviously that makes sense. But I could definitely tell you that if you were to have asked the high school aged me where I was going with photography, my answer in no way would be where I am now, let alone what my goals are as a photographer. Um, I took a photography class in high school kind of on a whim. I don't even remember what motivated me to enter that class other than like, oh, that seems like a cool skill and probably easy or something like that. It's usually how my brain worked when I was a teenager. Um, and I ended up being just kind of enthralled, I guess, by it pretty quickly, surprisingly quickly, actually. I think it really helped that I did have a good teacher. I was very lucky in that way. Um, she was somebody who was deeply passionate about her craft, who really knew what she was talking about, and who knew how to teach what she knew. Right? Not everybody who's good at something is good at teaching that thing. And she was somebody who, yeah, I didn't always agree with her point of view, but she had a lot of technical savvy. And there is so many different components of photography. Like, people can be technically good at photography, they can be artistically good at photography, they can be good at kind of the intuitive component of photography, right? Like being so in tune with your environment that you're able to capture moments. Like, there's so many components of photography, and then those components will vary depending on the type of photography you're interested in. That, like, where you start can really impact where you go, and how fast you go there and what you're interested in and all of these things. And I was lucky because she taught the technical component of photography very seriously, and that was something that gave me a very strong foundation to stand on. I understood, thanks to her, you know, a lot of things about composition, a lot of things about proper exposure, and just the basics, right? The basics, like what different shutter speeds do, what different apertures do, what different ISOs do, right? And all that technical savvy, because she drilled it into our heads so hard at the very beginning that became second nature. It really gave me a foundation to then be able to become the kind of photographer that I wanted to become and catch the kind of photos that I wanted to catch, where I didn't have to really think about the mechanics very much at all because it was like ingrained into me, and I could instead focus on the moment itself, which was the part that was always more important to me to start with. I think that dependent on the type of photographer you are, and like what kinds of photos you're looking for, what you're focusing on while you're photographing can vary tremendously. And so that's just kind of an interesting aspect of photography that I'm sure most photographers will talk to you about and have very different perspectives on, as far as what's important to them, what's not important to them, what they, the mental gymnastics that they do while they're photographing, right? That can be very, very, very different dependent on the types of photos that you're looking for and your, preferred subject matter and all of these different things. Um, but when I was in high school taking that class, I enjoyed photography because I can be relatively mechanical minded and I can like the mental gymnastics that come from being mechanical about things. And so that kind of pulled me in. And then what kept me was that all of a sudden I had a vehicle where I could express my own point of view and then have that become something that is beautiful and shareable in a very visual way very quickly, right? So I've always been interested in art. I've always done art ever since I was little, and I can't even remember all the different types of art that I've done. Um, but I liked the immediacy of photography, and I liked that I was capturing a unique perspective on real life things. And when I very first started, I don't know if this is the right like term, but I was very much like an abstract photographer in the sense of I wasn't focused on kind of conventional perspectives. I was very focused on how can I use this tool to get a perspective that most people don't even think of, or don't even look for, or don't even pay attention to, or whatever. So I was very interested in kind of exaggerating the perspectives and looking at ordinary things in kind of a, quote unquote, extraordinary way. And that's where I started out. And granted, the way I'm describing it makes it sound like they're just like superb works of art, but they really weren't. I mean, it was a high schooler who was sticking cameras under vending machines and stuff like that. Like, it wasn't like I was some, artistically superior being. It was just that I was having fun thinking about, okay, I'm always standing on 2 feet, standing vertically, looking, you know, X height at the world. What would it look like to look at the world from the floor or from the ceiling or from like all of these different perspectives that I don't normally have available to me? Um, so that's kind of where I started out. And then I started to have friends who were supportive in high school who are like, oh, you're taking photography class? Like, do you want me to model for you or do you want me to like help you? And so then I started dabbling kind of in just portraiture in general, um, because I had people who were willing to let me take their picture. And so I was like, sure, like, let's do it. And as soon as I started getting into portraiture, I noticed things about my preferred photography style. One, I noticed that I do truly love taking pictures of people. That was clear. More so than I ever expected until I actually experienced it. But I noticed that I would get bored very quickly of staged photos, of being in control of what's happening, or that person like preparing themselves for the photo. Like, of course, it was a gorgeous photo. The person's a gorgeous person. But as far as what like attracted my mind and what excited me mentally, doing stage photography was not it. And I learned that very quickly. And so that kind of got me curious about, okay, I like taking pictures of people, but I don't like really doing photo shoots. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not bad. It's just not something that I'm like passionate about. Um, And so I'm like, well, what does that leave me with? Well, it leaves me with like documenting life, right? Like documentary style photography and like street photography, like just going out into the world where people exist and catching people doing stuff in different environments. And so I kind of ended up going that route. Um, there definitely was a break in my photography journey. Like I said, even though it's been 14 years, I did not do photography for those full 14 years. I think there's definitely seasons in my life where I was just very distracted with life in general. And there was also a season where I just got really discouraged. And I don't even remember why, to be honest. Like, I can't fully put my finger on it. But I remember just feeling like, wow, I'm really not good at this or something. I don't know. There's something got into my head and kind of stuck there for literally like around 2 years. And then one day in college, I was just like, you know what? Like, I really miss doing this. Like, I remember having a passion for this. I remember this exciting me. I remember this being like a good thing in my life. And so I just kind of picked up the camera again on a whim, started taking pictures, and I was like, yeah, like this is it, right? And it just kind of clicked that like this is probably going to be something that's going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. But I definitely thought it was going to be something where I kind of stuck to street photography, and even like street photography like from a distance, like in the sense of, yeah, I would take pictures of people, but I wouldn't necessarily be like walking up to them and asking them for their portrait or like engaging them. I would be like more focused on like the bigger picture, and people would be inside that picture kind of attitude for a while. And then as time went on, I definitely evolved. Um, I evolved quite a lot as a photographer. Like, it's very interesting to kind of reminisce on what my work was like in high school and even in college compared to what it is now. And I think a lot of that is just a change in life circumstance, a change in fundamentally who I am, right? Like, you change a lot in life. And a lot of life experience under my belt kind of helped shape this passion as well. And um, street photography is still one of the fundamental aspects of my passion, but even how I approach street photography has definitely been evolving. And I think that it will continue to evolve, let alone the other areas of my life in which photography has kind of not just leaked in, but even some areas have been like, not taken over, but, been like a pretty dominant thing. So I did street photography for a while. Um, and I was not somebody who was artistically focused. And what I mean by that is like, there are photographers, and don't get me wrong, I commend them. It is such a skill and a talent, and it takes so much devotion and hard work. Like, I have a very strong appreciation for this way of doing things. It's just not the way that I do things. Who are very artistically focused. Like, they very much are looking for the art piece in their photograph, and their work is utterly stunning. There's a reason that they work that way, and it creates beautiful works of art, and it's great. I think for me, what appealed to me in photography was the way that it connected me to life, my own life, and the life around me. For me, it was more about documenting. It really is. And some photographers would say that that's boring, um, or that that takes less skill, or who knows, right? Like everybody has their own opinions about the different kind of forms that photography takes. I know I was literally just watching a documentary on a different photographer before I started this recording, and he was somebody who was like, yeah, documenting is boring. Like, I don't know, there's no reason why I would do that, right? Like, that was his attitude towards kind of my form of photography. And he definitely took a much more like abstract artistic approach, describing photography as its own sketchbook. And I would agree that photography can be that, and that it's beautiful when it is that. But for me personally, documenting is what excites me. It's what is exhilarating for me. It's what is enriching for me. I think that there's this thing for me personally that connects documenting my life to my own mental health. As someone who has experience with having very dark times in life and very poor mental health during certain seasons of my life, I know what it's like to be very disconnected to the richness and the goodness and the beauty of my life. Um, and so documenting life has this way for me where I am fully immersing myself in the intricacies of life and all of the beauty that exists within those tiny, minuscule details. And it is like this plethora of richness that I really can't put adequate words to. Um, but it makes me feel connected to life in a way that is very empowering, in a way that is very enriching, and in a way that is just drenched, just soaked to the bone with gratitude. That's why I am so passionate about photography, is because it, to me, feels like a form of gratitude, and it feels like a form of glorifying the Lord, because I am taking that conscious, intentional effort to immerse myself in these moments that He has given me, that He has blessed me with, and then turning around and celebrating those moments and making those moments available not just to my future self, but to anyone else, right? And so there's kind of this, as cheesy as it might sound, kind of this faith spiritual component, there's this mental health component, there's this is my life, like this is like the the moments of what is real for me, and I'm capturing them because of how much I value them and because of how much valuing them glorifies the Lord. And so I became more and more and more obsessed with documenting life, both my own life, right? Like my friends, my family, my animals, right? Like whatever. Um, and also just the life around me. Like we live in a world that is just teeming with life. Like there's such a abundance everywhere you go of everything that is the human condition and is the nature of the world and the times that we live in. And there's something very, very precious about that I am in love with. And so, yeah, that's kind of where my documentary or my photography documentary style came from, or the history of it, or however you want to say that. I just, I don't know. Like, I think that it is really hard to be grateful for a life you can't remember. And the more that you are intentional and aware and present in your experiences, the more gratitude you then experience because things don't pass you by nearly as much. You are immersed in the richness of life so much more, and that's what a camera is for me. A camera is a tool that grounds me in the richness of life, and then it continues to remind me of that richness far beyond the moment in which it happened. And I think that's why I'm so in love with photography. And it's such a passion of mine that I definitely wish I could do it every day in every circumstance. I wish that I could have a camera glued to my hand or strapped around my neck, everywhere I went. Um, and some of my friends can definitely attest to that I take photos and videos more than probably anyone else they know. But I still do it a lot less than I would want, to be completely honest with you. I think if I could have photography more deeply ingrained in my life, that would make me very happy. Um, but it's hard because photography is an interesting thing. I don't think that everybody sees it that way. I think, well, I know everybody doesn't see it that way. Um, Plenty of people find photography mundane. Plenty of people find it intrusive. Plenty of people find it unnecessary. There's a lot of other attitudes about photography that exist that are anywhere between, neutral and negative. Um, and so, that's kind of a big barrier is you want to respect people's boundaries and you want to not make people feel like you're being intrusive on their experiences and stuff. And so there's kind of that dance that you have to do of like, okay, in what environments can I really be my authentic self, which is somebody who loves to document um, the richness of my life, and in what environments do I need to kind of let that take a back seat in order to ensure that other people feel respected and safe, right? And so it's unfortunate to me that photography can um, cause such negative feelings in people. That's sad to me. I think that probably has to do with insecurities, right? Like people are always worried about how they're seen, um, what they're seen as, like just how they look, right? And that's sad to me. I think that one of the reasons why I love photography so much is because I think that people are beautiful. I really do. I really do. I think that people are stunning. I think that people are so much more than what they think they are. And I think that if they gave um, themselves a chance to be seen through the eyes of someone who sees them in that way, they maybe feel differently. I don't know. Um, but I think that's a part of why I love photography so much too, is like I get to capture the beauty of the people around me. And, you know, human souls are probably one of the most beautiful things in all of existence. And we have a way of expressing that soul in even just the smallest things that we do. And photography gets to capture that and celebrate that. And that's pretty dang cool. I think, I'm obsessed with capturing authentic moments of people being their truest self. And don't get me wrong, I like the pictures of people that I love no matter what they're doing. So if they're intentionally standing there and smiling, of course I'm going to love that picture. But I think that people are at their most beautiful when they're being their most authentic self, and authentic selves are not staged. And so I love capturing people when they're just doing life, then they're just being themselves, when they are just who they are. That to me is a beauty worth holding on to and worth regularly celebrating. And I think too that like human emotion and how we express ourselves is such an intricate dance that it's an art form in itself, right? Joy, pleasure, pain, sorrow, laughter, all of these things, right? All these ways that we um, send out into the world what is inside of us. That is a pretty cool thing. I think, a lot of my photography is focused on capturing very real emotion, um, and those kind of emotional transactions that go on between people, right? Like those exchanges of feeling and connection that happen with everyone around us. Um, I think those are the best moments. I think those are the moments that I want in my pictures. And I definitely have areas of photography where I want to be stronger, where I think that even though I am so moment obsessed, right? So documentary obsessed, there are still like aspects of composition that I want to get better at. Um, there's still like a level of artistry that I would love to slowly introduce into my work, just to make those moments be even more complimented or emphasized. Um, there are definitely photographers that I really look up to, where their photos are such a elegant balance of authentic human experience and artistry, and I definitely aspire to have that level of um, I don't know, skill, eye, talent, whatever you want to put there. And I also want to experience more of the world and travel and hopefully find other people who are interested in this type of thing, or willing to be around it at least, have a passion for it, who want to do it with me. um, it's street photography can be extremely fun on your own, but it's also can be a hell of a lot of fun with somebody else who shares that passion. I've definitely experienced that, of going out with other photographers and running around with other people who have a passion for photography, and that is just such a pleasure, and I really want more of that in my life. There's no doubt about that. As far as goals for my photography and for my photographic journey, I have I dabble in different mediums, so I'll talk about that in a second. That's not necessarily a goal, it's more just to continue to bring joy in my work and inspire me and make it fun. As far as goals, though, I really want to get better and better and better at making photographs that are. I'm trying to think of the right words. Making photographs that make you stop and think about that moment. Like, I'm good at capturing moments, but I want those moments. I want to get better and better at capturing those moments in a way that pulls you in a way that makes you feel like you're witnessing an an event. I don't know if an event is the right word, but like feels like you are immersed in a time that is never going to happen again. Right? There's some photographers' work that I've looked at where I could probably look at that photograph for like an hour, where like something about it makes me feel like I am there in that moment, in that experience with that person or those people. And I'm also trying to take it all in, trying to understand what is happening and why it's happening and what is being felt and what that all means, right? Kind of this um, call to connect with the subject, right? Like, I think that I do a good job at seeing the beauty of the people in front of me and then waiting for that opportune moment where that beauty shines. I think that I do that pretty okay, pretty decently. Um, but I think that there's still room to find a stronger narrative. You know, there's times where a photograph can tell, photographs are always telling stories, right? It's just whether or not that story is being well articulated is kind of what varies. But there are photographs where that story is maybe a sentence long, and there's photographs where that story is maybe a page long or a chapter long. And then there's photographs where that story feels like an entire book, right? Like it feels like there's so much there that you're not going to be able to read it in one sitting or in one glance or in one, 2-minute look on Instagram. Like there's photographs where you can look at it over and over and over again. And it's like you're reading more of that book, right? Like it's like you're taking in the next chapter. And that's kind of where I want to get is like I feel like some of my photographs, the stories may be a page long, or if I'm really lucky, the stories may be a chapter long, but I am not at the stage by any stretch where my story is a book, right? Like it's not the length of a novel. It's not that, it doesn't have that weight. Weight is a really good way of putting that. It doesn't have that weight yet. That is something that I'm still learning how to capture that weight because that weight exists, right, in life. That level of detail, that level of intricacy, that level of narrative exists in life. And so it's my job as a photographer, or it's my goal, I should say. Nobody assigned me this job, but it's the job I want. It's my goal as a photographer to become really good, as good as I possibly can at capturing that narrative. And that goal is super exciting and it really helps keep me going. Um, the other thing that I do is I do a lot of different mediums, right? I do digital photography, I do digital but with Fujifilm, so it's like film simulation, so it's kind of in the film realm, but not quite. I started dabbling in film photography because basically my little sister decided to take a film photography class, and she just thought the film photography was a lot cooler. And I'm like, well, I like cameras, so I'll do film photography with you too, because I already do photography anyways. So I kind of got into film because my sister was into film. And then very, very recently, I got into Polaroids, like instant film photography, and it's like super recent, like a couple days ago recent. And it has been really exciting. I've only shot with this my my instant film camera twice, and already it's something that I wish I could do every day. It is definitely not something that I can do every day, but I wish I could do it every day. And it just has a whole nother feel to it. So I will probably make a separate podcast or something. I don't know. This isn't I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with this recording other than post it somewhere. I think that I will most likely post it on my YouTube because that will be interesting, and you'll be seeing my photography throughout. But I'll see whether or not I post it as a podcast. Um, Probably. We'll see. But I'll make another one about Polaroid shooting, about instant photography shooting, because it's an extremely different experience. And I'll also consider talking about the different experiences with the different types of photography, how it feels, how people interact, just other information in case you're interested. Um, but yeah, I definitely have such a strong passion for this medium that I will approach it in almost any means made available to me, um, which might seem excessive to some people, but when it brings you as much joy as it brings me, it's worth every penny. It's worth every extra ness that exists. It is a fundamental part of who I am at this point. I don't think that I'm ever going to outgrow photography. I think that I'm going to be some old lady with a hunchback, you know, cane in one hand and camera in the other. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to stop, and I think it's going to be one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I think that it will be a gift to countless people that I love, and hopefully to my children, um, and their children, and just my family. I look forward to inspiring people. I look forward to investing in people. I look forward to teaching my kids photography. I look forward to bringing more and more joy into this world because of this passion of mine that I can then share and enrich other people's lives with. I think that photography is one of those things that if I could convince everybody to do it, I would. I would. I would turn every single person I know into a photographer. Um, it is something that I cannot possibly put into one recording. The amount of goodness that it has brought into my life and the potential for goodness that it can bring into others. Um, so if you're even thinking about doing it, I 10 out of 10 would recommend. I think that so many people don't try things because they're afraid that they're not going to be good at it. And they do this, well, if I can't be perfect right out the gate, then I'm just not going to do it at all. And that is really unfortunate because you miss out on so much of life because of that. And so, if you're worried about not being good at it, then just like don't be worried about that. And that's like easier said than done, but like photography is not about perfection. I think that's a really common misconception. Like, photography is about whatever you want it to be about. Like, if all your pictures are blurry and overexposed and underexposed and look like garbage, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, if it's what makes you happy, if it's a positive memory for you, then who cares? Like, it's not like, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's not like my work's up in a gallery. It's not like, I'm here impressing, the world renowned art critics. Like, people are so worried about how things look that they don't like try. That's pretty unfortunate to me. I think that one of the best things about photography in my life is how much it has caused me to try. to try new things, to go on adventures, to get in my car and get off my ass and don't go and do things. I go and do things because of photography, like straight up. Like photography is one of the best motivators to get me going and to get me doing things. And I wish that more people had that for themselves. I think that it would enrich their lives a lot more than they expect. Um, and it also makes me more present in my life than almost anything else I've done. And that's really exciting. To be present in your life is such a skill. And it's something that you have to consciously choose and consciously desire. And photography helps do that for me. Um, but yeah, you know, I hope that was interesting. I just kind of wanted to give a history of my journey with photography and kind of how I got to this place. Um, Even though I have been doing photography for a long time, most of my photographs from the early years don't exist anymore. I have a super old binder somewhere in the archives of really old photographs. Um, thank God I printed them out because if I hadn't, they would be gone. I had a hard drive that had all my old work on it, and that hard drive got like broken. It broke, and then I tried to get it repaired, and they told me that it cost some obscene amount of money, and I'm like, as much as I'm sad that my photography is now gone, I can't afford to get this fixed, especially because it was like one of those, well, it's going to cost you like $1,000, but then we don't even know if we can recover your stuff. And I'm like, no, thank you. Um, so yeah, so most of my photography is not available, is gone in the ether. um, but I have the last couple of years, uh, yeah, I have the last couple of years of photography. And then I have, thank goodness, I have a bunch saved on my Facebook. So even though Facebook doesn't have like full resolution photos, it still has like photos. So at least they're there. Um, but yeah, that's it. So I will um, post a whole bunch of pictures along with this recording for my YouTube channel, and then for those who decide to listen to this as a podcast. Um, you are welcome to look at my photography through many of the various means that are available on the internet. If you know me personally, obviously you can see it on my Facebook page. If you don't know me personally, you can check out my Instagram. Or if you decide that you want to see the photographs that I include with this recording, you can go over to my YouTube. So that is all for now. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and you guys will be hearing from me soon. Bye.